Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We're still talking about blood type, but now we're talking about a marker that's referred to as RH. This is named after a species of monkey called rhesus monkey, which has a blood that's very similar to human blood, and then it's used in a lot of studies. And when we talk about the RH blood group, we describe them as being RH positive, RH negative, or you'll just hear it as like positive and negative, leaving off the RH part. And again, this is genetically determined. Just like the blood type A and B, A, B, and O. But one thing that is going to be different in this case is there is no inherited antibody. So in this case, you're only inheriting information about your markers on your red blood cell, whether you have the marker or don't have the marker. So I have for RH blood type constructed another table, just like we had previously. I have, again, 3 columns and I have 3 rows. And at the top of the first column, I have blood type, and underneath I have either RH positive or RH negative. The second column is the inherited antigen marker on the red blood cell, and then the third column is the inherited antibody. And I've already written in the word none for both RH positive and RH negative because there is no antibody that is inherited as part of this genetic information, as part of this gene. When we talk about the RH factor being positive and negative, what we mean is you either have it or you don't. So I'm going to say on the RH positive, the inherited antigen marker is the RH marker. And so I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to draw my circle for my red blood cell, and then I'm going to draw like plus signs all along the outside to say that that's how this cell is marked. And if you're RH negative, you have not inherited any kind of marker here. And so let's do what we did with type O, where we just drew our red blood cell with nothing on the outside. So that's our RH negative. Now we mentioned here that in the case of RH blood type, you don't inherit an antibody, but you can be sensitized, let's say, against RH positive. Now, meaning if you're a person who has RH positive blood, then positive is self, and you would never be producing any kind of antibody against self. So an RH positive person does not have to be concerned. RH positive person doesn't have to be concerned. What we are going to see then is that the RH negative, so let me actually move my note here if I can. The RH negative person is the person who can be sensitized against the RH positive. So because the RH negative person has no marker here, then that positive marker would be considered foreign. Now, how do you get sensitized? You have to be exposed. So an RH negative person would have to have RH positive blood in contact with their body in their bloodstream, meaning in order to get sensitized. So if an RH negative person has a blood transfusion with RH positive blood, then they can be sensitized, right? Another way that this happens is during labor and delivery. So if you see at the bottom, we have what's described as the hemolytic disease of the newborn, or it can be referred to as erythroblastosis fetalis. And so what we'll see here, this only occurs from an RH negative pregnant person and an RH positive fetus. So the term fetus is used prior to birth. And then at birth, we use the term baby or infant, okay? So if the pregnant person is Rh negative and they're carrying an Rh positive fetus, okay, at labor and delivery, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood. And partly what happens is that placenta, we've mentioned already, is an organ that's half fetal tissue and then half pregnant person tissue, right? So it's half the parent and half the fetus. And so when that placenta has to be birthed. So you birth first the baby, and then you birth the placenta. And during that birthing, there's a rupturing of the blood vessels that were connecting that placenta in to the parent, into the uterus, right? And so there's bleeding of both the pregnant person and there's some fetal blood that's coming from that placenta because the placenta is half the fetus. And so what can happen at labor and delivery is the pregnant person, the parent, can be sensitized to the Rh positive. So what we see is some of those fetal blood cells become in the circulation, enter the circulation of the pregnant person and circulates through their body. So their body then sees those fetal Rh positive red blood cells as foreign and attack and remember that. And so if this is the first pregnancy, it doesn't really matter because that fetus is now a baby. It's an outside world. And so even though the pregnant person is being sensitized to Rh positive and killing these fetal cells, it's not in fact impacting the infant because the infant is outside of the pregnant person's body, right? The issue comes up the next pregnancy. So next pregnancy and all future pregnancies. So I'm just going to say future pregnancy. These Rh positive antibodies are small enough to cross the placenta. They target fetal red blood cells in that developing fetus. And so this can mean that the pregnancy doesn't go to full term. This can mean that at birth, this infant needs a significant blood transfusion. So this can be really devastating for the family to lose this developing fetus, right? Or this infant. So the term erythroblastosis is saying because the fetal red blood cells are all being attacked by this Rh positive antibody that crossed, they're pumping out these immature red blood cells, right? Now, this can all be prevented, and this is typically prevented with modern medicine. So in modern medicine, we have what's called the RhoGAM shot. And this is going to prevent sensitization to the Rh positive. So what it will do is it's actually synthetic antibodies. And so it will find those Rh positive cells and it will target them and you'll remove them before the pregnant person has a chance to be sensitized. So the pregnant person doesn't ever mount an immune response and develop memory to these cells. Instead, you use this synthetic antibody to do all that work. So this is like really amazing. So this is going to be administered during the 26, anytime between the 26 and 8 week of the pregnancy. And then again, 72 hours following birth. So that, you're protecting not only that particular pregnancy, but as well as future pregnancies. So that's a really amazing advancement that we see. All right. So up next, we're actually done with chapter 18, but we do need to start dipping our toes into chapter 19. So stay tuned. Take a break if you need to, but stay tuned for chapter 19. We're going to start with the heart. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.